This podcast was brought to you by Meros Cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Be a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilizes the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.
Hello and welcome to State of the Project Meros with me, your host, Cryptosi. And this is a very, very, very special episode for a whole plethora of reasons. Let me introduce my guest, as always, the enigmatic man himself, Kayaba. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Always amazing to be here, and I'm very excited for this episode.
Well, I'm very excited too. What I really want to do first and foremost is congratulate you and I. I'm not going to sing happy birthday, but this is the 1 year anniversary of the State of the Project podcast. So this is our 13th episode. We started an entire year ago now. So it's a real testament probably to your commitment more than mine. But I really wanted to discuss the ups and downs of the project and what has been the single most important commit to Meros so far.
So we actually started this back in January, so it's the 12th episode.
I'm sure I've got a December episode.
Right, this is the December episode.
Yeah, we started in December 2018.
The first update we did was January.
We'll have to get back to our listeners on that and put the actual result in the description, and somebody will be correct and somebody will be wrong. I'm assuming it's going to be you that's wrong, because I'm never wrong. So,
wow.
Back on topic, Kayaba, what do you think has been the most important commit so far?
It's really hard to pin one thing down. Meros has always had an incremental design. I'm not going to cheat and say the recent commit where we merged a branch, as that was really over 100 commits combined into one. But things are always evolving, and I think if we look at the additions, the line additions and line deletions in the codebase, I think the codebase actually has been rewritten 5 times at this point. Like we have some tens of thousands of lines in the codebase, and we have roughly 5 times that in the additions and deletions count. So it's really hard to pin anything down, especially if you don't want to cheat and say this one commit representing hundreds of commit is. But if I had to pick one thing, my mind goes to when we finally documented the protocol. We were over a year in, I think, when I finally wrote up the protocol docs. And really, it was a defining moment in my mind, because not only did it allow me to organize thoughts, really make sure all the pieces work together, cross-check it, but it provided a great platform for others to step in, really see how Meros works, and suggest improvements, because it's no longer vaulted up in my head, but it's there on paper.
So that was kind of like when you started to bring Meros out to the world. Is that how you kind of feel like it was not the start of mainnet, but Meros's public birth in some way?
Well, of course, Meros has always had its source code open since day one. But that was really when it wasn't just, here's the code, but here's Meros, here's its soul, here's its purpose and connections, and here's the explanation.
Okay.
So it's when Meros became accessible to others, in my mind.
Right. Okay. I wanted to ask also, my second half of this first question is, if you could go back in time and give the pre-Meros Kayaba some advice, what advice would you give him?
Oh, okay. Honestly,
yes.
There's a lot of advice I want to give myself. I don't want to give myself the cheesy stick with it, because I'm still here, still working on Meros. I could say, here's what you want to do here. Like, here's the protocol docs, or don't do this, really consider it. But if I did all that, I wouldn't have gone through the process where I learned about it. I wouldn't have stepped through the hoops. I wouldn't have learned the problems, and I would be taught to do something, but I wouldn't be taught why. So it's really hard to name any advice. I think I would just have said, put in more hours. It's not necessarily stick with it. It's not how to do something. It's just prioritize Meros.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that the pre-Meros Kayaba is just as perfect as the post-Meros Kayaba.
Oh, heck no. No, there's a reason I said the Meros codebase has been rewritten 5 times. We've talked about this on a previous episode where the blockchain's on version 6 of just how many rewrites I have for it, and the transaction DAG is on version 3. No, but the comment is that was the learning process. And as much as I'm embarrassed by it and kind of wish it wasn't in the Git history, that's the history of Meros. That's all the times I learned and grew and improved. And to give myself advice to stop that wouldn't be giving something to me. It would be taking something away from me.
I see. I understand. And I respect that answer. So I guess it's not quite the elephant in the room, but it's something that we cannot go through this episode without discussing, birthday or no birthday. The biggest news of the entire month, which dominated the recent Medium update, which was tri-weekly. It's kind of being stretched to monthly now. For those that aren't regular listeners to this podcast, there is also a text-based Medium update where Kayaba explains some things that are sometimes not within the audio podcast. So it's well worth reading that as well. The no-concensus DAG, it's been all over GitHub, or all over the Meros GitHub. What does it mean for the end user? And what would Meros have been like had you not made this significant change? Did Meros dodge a bullet, or have you found a way to put the cherry on the cake? So
for the end user, the biggest change is really going to be twofold. It's, first of all, it introduced pool-resistant mining. Because while the no-consensus DAG was named No-concensus DAG, which signified how it removed the existing consensus DAG and completely replaced it with a new structure, it wasn't just that one change. It was named that because that was the most significant change in it. So as we look at the branch and all the changes in it, the two that are user-facing are, first, the fact that the mining is now pool-resistant. If you want to mine Meros, you have to run your own node, you have to have your own merit holder, have to act as a merit holder. And the second thing to that was just speed. The question is that speed notable to the user? I don't know. But I will say, as transactions ramp up and we get a lot more transactions, yes, that speed will likely become very apparent. But mainly it focused on the internals of Meros and making sure we didn't have technical debt. The main reason we did this branch was because there's this massive speed up we can do. Basically, if we have 10 votes for one transaction, we can either A, have 10 signatures for 10 votes, or B, we can have one signature for 10 votes. Second, obviously being preferred. So while we will not do this at mainnet, that's what this branch was enabling. We restructured the existing consensus DAG to be more of a layer over the transactions DAG instead of an independent DAG. And because of that, we've enabled aggregating the verifications as so. And that's going to be a massive speed improvement. But in order to accomplish that massive speed improvement with the existing DAG structure, we would have had to do the same thing we're doing now, but 6 months in. And if we do it 6 months in after mainnet, we have to support the old structure forever. It's part of mainnet. It's part of the history. If you want to verify mainnet, you need it. So that's really why we did it when we did, just so we don't have a DAG for 6 months that we end up supporting forever.
Yeah, I understand. I feel that technical debt is quite a big issue within blockchain. So I'd like to possibly talk more about that in our next episode. So I'm actually going to write and make sure I remember that. Milestones. It's not only the 1 year anniversary of State of the Project Meros, but we've also just passed I say we as if I had any hand in it. You guys have also just passed 1,500 commit. Now, we have discussed this off air briefly. The need for some of those commits to be independent. How do you get this balance between regular updates and a code base that changes too rapidly? When released to mainnet, how often do you plan on releasing these updates?
So I've been fully transparent about how Meros has had a rapid and jagged development cycle and how we've had many iterations, and each iteration is improving on the last one. And the whole purpose of that is because it isn't mainnet yet. We can make these changes now. And if we can make a better cryptocurrency without incurring and remove technical debt in the process, without incurring the need for a hard fork and community consensus, now is the time to do it. As we head into mainnet, obviously that's going to change. The protocol will become the protocol. And the question, as you said, the question becomes, how do we move from there? I truly believe network upgrades are immensely beneficial. Bitcoin, I think you do have to bump the protocol constant, just the ID for the protocol, but you can connect an original Bitcoin node to the existing Bitcoin mainnet. And as much as I want to say that's impressive, just the fact that it's still the same over 10 years, it's one of the things that's made Bitcoin incredibly stagnant and unable to advance. Because even though Lightning Network and other alternatives exist, getting people to adopt Lightning is still a strenuous task that adds many limitations, and you still have to convince them to do it, which in some cases will be just as hard as convincing them to use Bitcoin in the first place. So I truly do want our Meros to be something that continuously network upgrades. The question is just, how do you make sure there's consensus on the network upgrade and the community actually wants to do it and enough of the miners want to do it or the new network will be secure? And how often do you do it so you're not just saying, hey, every single week, download the new node or get screwed? Personally, I think the balance comes with a 6-month timeline. 3 months is also possible, but you really want to make sure when you do a new hard fork, you're properly checking both the code and with the community and with the miners. And then when it comes to truly signifying whether or not people are in approval of it, Meros has data transactions, which literally just store very small segments of data. So we can use that as an on-chain pulling mechanism, to make sure the community and the miners and the bear holders are behind it.
Will you also be considering the projects that are built on top of Meros? Obviously, with Meros handling data as it does, there's a good chance that people in the future will decide to build projects on top of Meros. How will you prioritize their needs for stability within a code base? But also they may want certain upgrades. How will you possibly poll them, or how will that work?
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media. Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PivX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over. So if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed. Link is in the description.
So the mainnet Meros protocol will support small segments of data, 255 or 256 bytes. I forget the exact number, sorry. But what this means is we do support tokens on day one, thanks to that. Not in the wallet, but just in the protocol. Because you can create token standard 1.0, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. You really don't have to attach a version. But my point was, if you get people to agree, this data is this data, and it does this. And if you get people to agree on both the standard and the execution, you can create a token. And people can send it. And yes, people can create invalid token transfers. And yes, Meros will still confirm them because they appear as valid transactions. But your interpreter of these token transactions will still realize they're invalid and will still reject them there. Using just data, it's possible to build fully fledged token protocols, which could even be expanded to more complicated things like smart contracts. And the nice thing about that is the only thing it really relies on is data transactions, the pure ability to store data. And even though it's only 255 or 256 bytes, you can still use that data to store an IPFS hash. And that IPFS hash can link to a much larger program. So the question isn't what features do we add and expand? The question is just, do we preserve this very simple primitive? And I see no reason not to preserve it. When it comes to locking up Meros on second layers, though, that goes to our lockboxes. And that is something different. And likely if we do want to upgrade lockboxes, which is just Bitcoin-style scripts, it's to enable second layers, so we do have some way to scale at the very start, if needed. So with lockboxes, we look at two different things. One, using unused opcodes. Basically, we never put something here, let's put something here. Something that doesn't change the behavior of existing lockboxes. Or we look at versioning. Version 1 will always be version 1. But from height X, you can now also create version 2 lockboxes. So it's a mix of just keeping a very raw primitive and letting second layers do their own thing. And with lockboxes, either using space that was previously unused or implementing a versioning system. Which of those two options I'm interested in doing, I don't know, just because we're not there yet. But I don't see a problem with making sure second layers are stable and keep the support they need.
Excellent. Sticking on the theme of milestones, let's discuss two other significant, socially significant milestones. Firstly, Meros has now reached 10 forks. How do you feel about people forking the Meros code base? We have spoke about it before in a previous episode, and you were positive. But has that changed, considering you've been working on this for close to 2 years? And if it hasn't changed, why has it not?
Anytime someone forks Meros is a chance for them to contribute new code, and any of that code can be put back into Meros, unless they use a horrible license, of course. But that just gives Meros a chance to grow. Because even though, yes, you can technically say your edits are part of this license and therefore unusable, which would be really just a jerk move, most of the time that's not what happens, even with Bitcoin forks. Most of the time they still use a license that's compatible, and that means where if a fork grows, the original coin has a chance to grow. And really what my stance on forks is if you have X and someone forks it into Y, and they contribute better code, if they provide a better service, if they do the original task better, Y deserves the spotlight. If Meros is beaten by a fork in terms of development, in terms of community, in terms of business support, then I fully support another coin taking the spot of Meros. Because the point here isn't Meros to succeed as a cryptocurrency, it's for a cryptocurrency to succeed as a cryptocurrency. And while I think Meros is one of the best coins positioned to do that, it's not just about Meros, it's about the wider implications. So I fully support forks just because of the opportunities they provide to both themselves and to Meros. I truly believe in the open source community and survival of the fittest here.
Awesome. The final milestone, 50 stargazers, including a senior engineer at Netflix. I have done my research. I've done my digging around. Does this mean that Meros is going to have a partnership with Netflix?
So, of course not. But I am kind of interested in how that partnership could even work, and just like thinking of how Netflix could use any distributed ledger technology solution.
No,
but really, I'm just happy to see that people are noting the project, and some of them aren't people who just star thousands of projects, but some of them are people who are other developers, who are presumably qualified developers, and that just gives me a bit more hope and faith in my own skills.
Yes, because that's really what I wanted to ask you. On a serious note, obviously there isn't a deal going with Netflix, but it must fill you with pride when you realize that some very respected engineers and senior engineers who are close to the top of the software industry are keeping an eye on your project? How does that make you feel?
I would say proud.
Awesome.
It's really just the best way to sum it up.
So we're coming extremely close to the Meros mainnet launch. Are you working behind the scenes to ensure that the correct people are involved in the project from its inception? And what sorts of skills and attributes do you think would suit this project?
So right now I'm working on bringing on 3 separate people for 3 separate jobs, even though 2 of them are connected. The first one is just a GUI developer. One of the main things Meros needs to be able to survive and thrive is a quality GUI that makes Meros accessible, that makes it easy, that makes it usable by the public. So I'm really excited to get a GUI developer involved in the mix. The other 2 is a marketing strategist to really put Meros out there and make sure people know about it, to get businesses interested in it and provide the infrastructure needed to use it for payments. Because if a business doesn't accept Meros, it can't be used as a currency. Then that's the point of Meros, to use it as a currency. And then finally, I'm looking at someone to become a social media manager and really engage with people on that end. When it comes to beyond that, I think really we're just looking for people who can help the project in any way. It's a large undertaking. Meros, of course, doesn't have the funding of venture capitalists. It doesn't have the funding of someone who's done multiple ICOs in the past. And because of that, when it looks for qualities in person, we need people who believe cryptocurrency can succeed, believe cryptocurrency can benefit the world, and believe Meros is one of the things that will help it along.
Awesome. I know that you do not like to give dates on the mainnet release, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you every single time we speak. So what do you think mainnet release date will be now? You don't have to give an exact day. You can give a quarter.
As much as I hate to say it, I feel like I've been in the eternal forgetfulness. For a long time now, I've always thought 3 months from now, 3 months from now, 3 months from now. I think I've been like that for about 4 months now.
Yeah.
Which is a bit depressing, but gotta keep working through it. Always nice to see that eventually it will end. And I think now we might actually be at the last 3 months. With this last change, it really has just reminded me about where the infrastructure is, what pieces we have left. And I think maybe in 3 months from now, we'll finally be ready at the testnet before mainnet, where that testnet is basically the full mainnet, and it's meant to find bugs, to demonstrate Meros, to prove that we exist, we're here, and we're ready. I want to do a longer testnet, like 1 month long, to truly test it. If people aren't getting involved, then there's no point to keep it on for that long. But I want something to prove we're stable and prove we're secure. Because if we're launching a cryptocurrency that isn't secure, we haven't done our jobs. We've put profit in front of our moral obligation. And because of that, it kind of brings the total up to 4 months or so. 3 months of work, 1 month for the testnet. And I think between all that, we're going to be looking at Q1 of next year, hopefully February or March.
Okay. So towards
the nicest thing to say, but that's the facts. Well, and I will be honest here.
Well, we're in December now, so Q1 or late Q1 next year is not too far away at all. It's not too far away at all. What sorts of, I know we do go over this every month, but just in case some people didn't hear last month's podcast, what sorts of things do you think need to be tackled before we hit that testnet? And also, if you find something else that will possibly allow for some technical debt moving forward, do you think you would push back mainnet again to handle that?
So my main view on technical debt is if it's in the protocol, If it's not something we can remove, handle it now. If you have to do it before mainnet, let's do it before mainnet. But if it is something we can remove or fix after we launch, do it then. One thing that I really do not appreciate about Meros is how we sync data. When you're syncing up to the tip of the blockchain, when you're doing that first sync, downloading all the blocks, all the transactions, we really just do not have some optimized algorithms there. It's a lot of things can be done. But the thing about it is, that's all network messaging. Well, we save the blocks to disk, we don't save the network messages to disk. We can change the protocol later, and it won't have any effects. We won't have to save the old protocol. We'll just have the new protocol, and that will be that. And while this existing protocol could be counted as technical debt, it's removable. It's not like we have to keep it in the code base forever. Whereas this consensus DAG, we would be talking about completely redoing it 6 months in and having to forever support both of them, because both of them are mentioned in the blocks, both of them are part of the system forever. So really the question is it something we have to do now if we don't want to have? When it comes... Sorry, what was the first part of this? What was the first part of the question again?
The first part was, what other things do you need to check off of the to-do list before we hit a testnet?
Sorry. So when it comes to that, mainly we focus on the protocol. There's two types of consensus. To kind of generalize here, we can say there's two types of consensus. There's global consensus and there's node consensus. So if we look at Nano, it sees transactions, it sees votes, it comes to its independent decision and acts on it. Now, if we look at Bitcoin, the network sees a block. The network all agrees this is a block. The network all agrees this is the longest chain. The network is in consensus. So with Meros, we really focus on everyone in the network agreeing. You will never have nodes out of sync unless a node is malicious or out of date and hasn't followed the hard forks. So because of that, really, once we implement the protocol, the node itself is top-notch. Beyond that, it really comes down to the GUI. We really just need to work on making it accessible. So that's the two things. It's finishing up the protocol and implementing a quality GUI, because the existing GUI is as bare as can be and just meant for basic testing purposes.
Okay, so you currently do have a GUI at the moment. I was under the impression you were doing everything at command line.
I do use the command line for a lot of my work, but no, we do have GUI. It's plain text. It doesn't have any images, doesn't have any styling. It lets you set a seed, lets you view your seed, lets you create sends and datas. It's basic, but it technically works. And then the node, if you get a send, it will automatically, track it.
Yeah.
So it technically works. It's just not quality. It's not something I would ever want to launch with.
Moving forward with state of the project Meros, I was starting to think that we've had a year now of doing audio-only podcasts. What do you think about the possibility of moving from audio-only to audio and video as we move into 2020?
I would love that. I think it would be very nice to get that new format going. My only concern is the fact that my desktop does not have a webcam. No, but my laptop does, and I can always just switch over to that for a little bit. So I think it could be exciting, and I would have fun with it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if the community's interested in that, I would love to do it.
Do you know what? Great minds think alike, because that is exactly what I was going to say. Anybody listening, any of the listeners, if they do feel that it's a good idea, just say so in Discord or on Twitter or wherever. And if enough people really want it, then I'm prepared to put the effort in to move over to video. I think it will be an interesting change, an interesting dynamic, and possibly give people a bit more of an experience, perhaps. Obviously, I'll still like to keep the audio only version. So whatever we do in video, we'll crop the audio and put that to the podcast platforms, which is where most people do actually take in the podcast. So I'd keep it like that. So is there anything else you'd want to say about the past year or the past month within Meros, or anything about things moving forward?
I feel like there's been a lot of changes. Some of them have been on old work instead of new work. It's not necessarily bringing us closer, but remixing what we have for it to be better. But I feel like we're a lot better off because of it, and I feel we have a much stronger position. And even though it kind of has been backtracking a bit, I'm very happy with the work. Sort of a one step backward, 2 steps forward.
Yeah, I hear you. It does make sense. Right, thank you very much, Kayaba, for your time as ever. You've been the usual mercurial fountain of knowledge that you are. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on State of the Project, Meros. It's a very interesting project. Love the transparency and really looking to see where things go. Thank you to everyone who's listened. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions and all that good stuff. If there are any questions you have that you want to put forward to Kayaba for the next podcast, which may well be in video format, please jump into the Discord for Meros, the link is always in the description. And there's a channel in there called State of the Project. You can put your questions forward there, and I pretty much always get around to asking them, if not in the immediate episode, but possibly the one after. So yes, once again, thank you very much for listening. I will stop rambling on. Have a great, New Year and Christmas if you celebrate it. And Kayaba, thank you very much. I will see you in the new year, sir.
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year's, everyone.
This show is brought to you by PIVX, Private Instant Verified Transactions. With its groundbreaking zero-coin staking and masternodes, PIVX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivx.org.